I know the way I'm writing this is a little different than most stories are written, but I thought it was a way of keeping your attention. They're referring back and forth to different times I would think you would keep your interest. Back to the Navy. We were put up in tents in New Guinea. The place was loaded with bed bugs. I got bitten by a mosquito and got a high fever called dengue fever. After that, they got my fever down. I was assigned to my PT boat, Squadron 18 PT 367. The crew on the boat was made of men of all ages. The skipper was being replaced and the executive officer was made captain. The new executive officer's name was Mr. Sachs. He seemed like a nice guy. You know, as I write these things down, I want to try and not put anybody down, but Mr. Sachs seemed more like a playboy instead of an officer. We went out on patrols every day at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. There were usually 3 PT boats in each patrol. Our job was to intercept Japanese ships and barges bringing in supplies to its troops. Also, we strafed the shores, batteries, and were dropped death bombs on submarines. I could go on and tell you all about our encounters, but I'll let other people do that. One thing I will tell you about that has haunted me all these years, one morning coming in off of a mission, Mr. Sachs was at the wheel. When we entered the harbor, he revved up the engines and he started hot dogging in between the ships anchored in the harbor. This is a good time for recall.
Oh, wait. Leaving me hanging.
Every weekend I got a Liberty and I traveled to Providence, Rhode Island and caught a train to New York City. There I transferred to a train to Asbury Park to see June. We had such a good time walking on the boardwalk, walking on the beach. We were so in love, I will never forget the feeling, her touch. We were like one. The last weekend before I was to be shipped to California, we promised each other no matter what happened, we would wait for each other. I could see the look on her eyes when I was leaving on the train. She walked alongside the train, waving as long as she could. Thinking back, we were not the only ones saying goodbye. The station was full of sailors and soldiers and military personnel, all saying goodbye, not knowing whether this would be their last. What an empty feeling as I stared out the windows, obviously to the scenery, that when I began to realize that I may never see June again, I vowed I would do everything in my power to prevent that from happening. So young, and she was just 15. It's hard to believe. In today's world, anything like that could happen. Her mother and father were very strict with her, but somehow I managed to win their confidence. June was special. She was in Bob Ripley's Believe It or Not. At 9 years old, she bowled over 202. She could rattle off some of the most difficult classics on the piano, Rachmaninoff, Rhapsody in Blue, Brahms, and so on. She was a champion horseback rider, and she put on skating exhibitions all over the state. She also filmed as a stand-in for Shirley Temple. She never wanted anybody to know about all the accomplishments. After we were married, she had me put all the press releases and anything that had to do with her stories up in the attic. She never talked about it. I abided by her wishes, but I was so proud of her, not only for what she accomplished, but her humility. She guided all 4 of our children into wonderful adulthood. Horse shows, 2 girls qualified for the Olympics in swimming, and my 3rd daughter turned out to be a wonderful writer and photographer for a national magazine. My son became a very successful veterinarian with a huge following. This is a good place to go back to the main story, but before I do, one thing I learned out of all this: if you had something to say to the person you love, don't hold back. Tell her what's in your heart and in your mind, because you never know, the day will come that you can never tell her your feelings and thoughts. That you will always regret. My mother and father were from the old school. Strict, be in by dinner time. Go to church on Sundays. We were given a quarter to put in the collection basket. I used to stop and make change. 15 cents for the church and 10 cents for my ice cream cone on the way home.
There's a smart kid.
I had two sisters and two brothers. My younger brother became a doctor. My older brother, who was a great artist, became an automotive engineer. During the war, he designed airplanes and tanks. My oldest sister worked in a secretary. My younger sister ended up and is still running a home for unwed mothers. Recall. During the big band era, we were able to see them on Sundays at the Stanley Theater in Camden. After the show, we could go to the White Tower and buy hamburgers for 5 cents. Today, they're called, these little hamburgers are called sliders. I got a job in an ice cream store. We sold Breyer's ice cream, 3 dips for a nickel. I don't have to tell you, people lined up all day and night. When the war started, I switched jobs. I took a job at a gas station. Gas was rationed, but I could get all the gas I wanted. I had a 1937 Club Coupe convertible. Great car. We always had a man sitting on the bow, back to the main story, looking out for logs of any kind, of big floating objects. The boat threw up about a 15 to 20 foot rooster tail. Those of you that don't know what a rooster tail is, it's the backwash from the propellers. Anyway, as we were zigzagging in full speed between all kinds of ships at anchor, a large merchant ship cargo appeared. Lieutenant Sachs tried to miss it, but we hit it head on. The lookout was knocked overboard, passed under the boat, and through the props. The impact knocked us down. I got up and ran to the back of the boat and dove off into the backwash, swimming as fast as I could to recover the lookout. When I finally reached him, which seemed like a lifetime, I grabbed for his arm. My hand went right inside of him. He had been sliced open by the propellers. I jumped back shocked. I didn't want to lose him, so I grabbed him by the hair. As I looked around, I realized that I was floating in a blood-red sea. The first thing that came to my mind was sharks. My God, I'm going to die from shark bites. I started looking for my boat. It was in a distance from me, going in a big circle. I could see the bow was smashed. I started towing the lookout towards my boat. Finally, Lieutenant Weaver appeared on deck and turned the boat towards me. They got to us and they lifted the lookout up to the deck. Then they lifted me up to the deck. Mr. Sachs, I think, went a little nuts. He was calmed down and we headed towards our base. We had a damaged bow and lots of uncertainty and excitement. We finally got to the dock. You know, I just stood there and stared into space. I couldn't believe what had happened. The lookout had a family, some kids. Mr. Sachs was court-martialed and I was told to keep quiet and was given a medal. Like, who needs it? I always wondered what his family was told to how he died. I was torn between sparing them the truth or keeping quiet. To this day, I still have awful thoughts pulling me in both directions. I just hope that his wife and his children knew him as a hero. In my book, he was really a hero. Time for recall. Our high school was small. It was a regional school where students came from Haddon Heights, Barrington, Lawnside, Berlin, Lindenwold, Laurel Springs, and so on. So we had quite a mixture. Rich, poor, farmers, blacks, and we all got along great. One of my best friends was a black kid, smart as a whip. He passed away early in life. Then we had the guys with the ducktail haircuts and one-button jackets with the peg pants, known as zoot zoots. Hot stuff, long gold chains, and patent leather shiny shoes. The girls wore mini skirts. Some were pretty short, but that was the style back then. There were so many love stories. Kids stayed together all through school, and then got married. June was maid of honor for her girlfriend, who married Jack Paul. Walt Pars married Seb Kurtz, and so on. I'm thinking about 16 to 19-year-old kids, and they all made it. We didn't believe in divorce, not because of religion, but because that's the way we were raised. We had a class reunion every 5 years. To see the change in people was almost frightening. I guess time really took a toll.